Folks, Chris with Christcross Crafts here. I wanted to address a little problem I was having in my shop with my dust collection on my router table. I was using this little adapter. You may be able to hear that's got a little movement to it. I did have some electrical tape kind of snugging that up in there, and it was pulling the majority of the chips up from the top, but there was still some chips coming from the bottom. So I want to go ahead and address that and get something that's going to take care of both top and bottom of the router section all at the same time. So hold tight and I'll show you how I solved my problem. Okay, so what I found was this Keen router dust collection kit. It looks like that's going to be the best solution for me. It's designed for standalone router tables, so you got plenty of room on the backside to come right off and then go right into your dust collection. Well, I don't have that benefit because mine's attached to my router, to my table saw. The only solution I really have is to go off the back end. I don't want to come off the front and then interfere with anything, so I want to go off the back end because that's eventually where my dust collection is going to be anyway. So the basic gist of this, when you open the box, you have this which mounts under the table, and then you can see it's got a two-way splitter here and then one that goes off to your shop vac, or in my case I'm going to adapt it to go right into my dust collector. You have a small hose and a large hose. The large hose is supposed to come off of one end and go up around your router table. This is where I ran into a problem. I can't do that. So I have to come off the back end. This other side is designed to connect into this little blue shroud, which actually mounts up underneath your table right in your router area. So this comes off of there, this into here, and then this hose up and around. Again, that didn't work for me, so after about an hour of test fits and messing around in the store looking for the right fittings, I finally came up with a solution. It's going to look a little redneck, but this is Chris with Christcross Crafts. That's what we do. We're all about redneck around here. So hold tight, and I'll walk you through as clear and as best I can to help you show what you can do. So if you've got a router table mounted to your table saw, then you can still use this kit with just a couple of parts and a couple of fittings. All right, hold tight, and we'll walk you through it. So what you're supposed to do is line this up with the center lines. There's just a piece of clear plastic, and what you'll notice is one side is smooth, the other side has Velcro, and that is so that it will easily affix to that. So when you go to mount this, it just needs to be mounted in the same location where your screws were, with the Velcro facing up. So I'll line this up on my center lines and see what I can find out here. So I've lined this up right in the middle of all my screw holes, so that I know this thing's going to be dead center, and it does have sort of marked lines on the going across the piece. I've marked the screw hole locations for each of these, so I'm going to drill those out slightly larger than the screw holes, and that way when this gets mounted back in place, the router base itself is then going to sandwich it in, so it's not going to go anywhere. So I'll get these drilled out and we'll come right back. Okay, so I've got my holes drilled, and so essentially what this needs to happen is this needs to go here just like that, and then this is going to flip over on top of it just like that. So essentially those holes are going to line up with the holes in my router table, and they should, if I did my job right, be dead center. And there we go. So we'll line that up accordingly. And I'll drop my 4 screws back down in there. And before I get everything fully tightened, I'll just kind of move this little plastic plate around just to make sure everything's dead center. But let me get my screws started first, that way I know that part's done. Okay, so now I can reinstall my base and start running the bottom part of the ductwork just for the sake of giggles. I do want to go ahead and, while this is up on top, I can go ahead and run this through there, just like that. Now I can realign that once I get my router base in there. That would actually probably be a better option, but I think I'm just going to at least temporarily get it in there for now. That way when I flip this over, it will be a lot less cumbersome for me. So welcome to the underbelly of my saw. As I suspected, I probably should have held off on putting that in so that I could get it in at the right angle. But anyway, so next step we have to do is mount our router base back in. And I'm going to go ahead and drop that to its lowest point after I disengage that a little bit. Go ahead and drop this one down. Of course, not allowing it to fully come out of there. Now, knowing that mine is going to come out of my dust collection is going to come out of the back of the saw, I want to engage that in. Has to sneak through just barely through the back of the plate, and I'm going to have to make sure that's turned appropriately. Alright, what you didn't see I was doing from above the table is actually making sure that it was centered. A little tough to see from down here, but everything looks centered. It's kind of coming off the back end, so now when this base gets raised and lowered, I should have no problems whatsoever. Man, what I wouldn't give for a router lift someday, right? So anyway, that'll raise and lower accordingly, and hopefully have no problems interfering with the movement of the router and how things work. So hold tight and we'll finish up. Okay, so now it's time to mount the dust collection fittings. I'm going to start down here with this mounting to the back of the little shroud. And if you'll notice, this gives you a little indication. You got your router here and your dust collection there. So it's easy to figure out where you're going. It doesn't really matter. It's a T intersection anyway. So now that I have this up, I'll mount this to the back just to kind of see how far back I need to go to make my mount. I think it's going to come out somewhere about back here, just perfectly underneath the rail, which is what I was looking for. Yep, I think that's going to be perfect. It's not putting much tension on this rubber gasket at all, and it's allowing that dust to come right out of there, and I'll be able to come right down the back of the saw. So I think that's going to work out good. I was debating whether to use the longer hose since I couldn't use it for the top side of the table, but I think the shorter hose is actually going to work out pretty well. So hold tight, we'll finish up the back end, and I'll bring you around the other side so you can see what I'm doing over there. Okay, so this is where it's going to start getting redneck. I've pre-installed my fence just sort of temporarily. I've got to be able to come from the fence, and if you remember, this 4 to 2 1/4 just wasn't quite cutting it. Plus, that's going to force the dust to come straight out, and that kind of impedes into the table a little bit, so I wanted to make it a little cleaner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come off with an elbow. That way it gently forces the dust to the back of the saw where I need it to go. However, I can't find anything that's dead on fit to this. So what I did was I purchased the step adapter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off almost the whole end of this piece here, so that I could leave it long like that sticking in, but I just don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off about a 1/2 inch from this lip, and I may go a little more, but I'm going to then glue that to the back of the shroud. So I know that I'm going to mount it in like this. This has a nice press fit, so I can sort of adjust this where I want it to go. will come off the direction I want it to come. Now this is where the redneck part comes in. I'm going to mount a 2.5 inch hose and come off and down and around, and then I'm going to fit into this bracket that we mounted earlier. So what I'm going to have to do here is get ingenious again. This adapter here will slide right into the hose. So I've got that problem solved. So I'm going to take this other step adapter, and it press fits right onto there. And one of these step adapters will fit perfectly snug right into there. So it's this one. So what I'll do is I'll come over here and I'll cut the rest of these off. If you've never used one of these things are phenomenal. They're made of a sort of a soft rubber, and you can come in here with just a box cutter, cut off what you need. So now I know I've got enough hose, so I think that section is going to work. So hold tight, I'll cut everything up, get everything nice and snug so you don't have to watch me fiddling with this weird dust hose. It wants to constantly collapse on itself. So I'll get that fit and finished, and we'll go from there. So what I did was I ran a couple of zip ties in here. Again, redneck fix, but you got to do what you got to do, right? So I can come right in here and take this. Let me take this assembly apart just so it's easier to look at. So I'll come right in here like so. This little fitting I've got has a little holes in it, so that kind of works out perfectly for my application. I was going to figure out a way to screw that to it, but instead zip ties will work, and you run it a little bit, and if I see I need to make some adjustments, then you know I've not permanently affixed anything. So I'll zip tie that just like that, and just like that, and I get that snugged up where it needs to go. Alright, so that's not going anywhere now. So we've got this zip tied, hose is clamped, running across. If you'll notice, I did slightly cut this and taper it so that it closely matches the angle here. So when this is mounted, it will sit close. It won't hinder any of my bits if I get into any larger bits, like door panel bits or anything. So what I'll do before I mount this is I'm going to lightly hit it. Since this is an acrylic material, I'm going to hit this with some silicon carbide sandpaper and just lightly get this scuffed and cleaned, so that when I use my JB Weld Super Weld gel, which is designed for steel and rubber, and plastic, so this will do well to mount the plastic to the rubber. It's got a quick set time and a fairly decent cure time, so that's going to be an all-around good option for me. So let me get this set up and get this clamped, and then we'll call it a day. So I went ahead and took the clamps off the back of the dust port that we glued in, and as you can see, got a good bond. So what I'm going to do, let's give it a quick test fit to make sure everything works, test run, and we'll hook it up and see if the dust is getting pulled out. So again, I'm going to leave these zip ties a little long for now. I'm going to come back and trim them once I know this is going to work. But as you can see, take the dust hose right out from underneath there. It's snug fitted right into that back of that port, so I should have no problems there whatsoever. And should be able to put my snap ring in and give it a good test run. So as you can see, we have the insert mounted underneath. We have a dust port coming out with an elbow. Following that around, you can see that we have that clamped off there underneath the table. We have this T-joint coming off to a quick adapter for quick connection to the dust collection system. We have this elbow ring here, connecting into the port back there, into this blue shroud here. Alright, well there you go. The Keen router dust collection kit worked like a champ. Yeah, I could have possibly pieced most of this together just using normal dust collection fittings. However, that little rubber gasket that went around the inside of the bit on the bottom, that was the game changer. That really allows true chip collection on the bottom side of the table. But anyway, everything went together, not as planned according to the box. But if you've got a router table system that's mounted to a table saw left or right, you probably would endure the exact same problem that I did using something standard. So hopefully this helped you out a little bit, gives you a little insight of what you could possibly do. You may ask, well, what about changing all this out when I go to take this off to use the table saw? Well, this simply disconnects. It'll lay right down. It does not hinder the table saw action whatsoever, so there's nothing going to cause problems there. So the fence then would allow me to come straight off the saw, no problems at all. So hopefully this helps. If you got any problems or questions, don't forget to leave me a comment, and of course don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Chris with Christcross Crafts, the Keen Dust Collection Router System.